Welcome to the Block Exploring Podcast, your first step into the world of crypto and blockchain. The Block Exploring Podcast is your one-stop place to find quick, clear, and unbiased information on everything in the crypto space. Our goal is to help you grow familiar with the crypto space by growing along with us as we go on our crypto journeys. Follow at Block Exploring on Twitter for our newest uploads and our publishing schedule. We, here at Block Exploring, are crypto enthusiasts working hard towards becoming experts. Today's podcast is presented by co-hosts Tommy and Elias. Find us on Twitter under @SabaiSquare and @LotocoCrypto. Right now you can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Before we start the episode, we would like to inform you that we are not financial advisors. Therefore, nothing said in this podcast should be considered financial advice. Always contact your financial advisor before making any investment. With that said, sit back and enjoy today's podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 11 of News Bytes on the Block Exploring podcast. We're going to talk to you about the great China migration of miners, the millennial crypto adoption, Bitcoin becoming more correlated with other assets, Mark Cuban getting rug pulled, and all sorts of tech developments. Especially, we're going to focus on China this week. So, Tommy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's very warm in here. I'm not recording from my usual setup. So,
I can imagine if you're like a Bitcoin miner, I've heard those like rigs get super hot. So in
Yeah.
summer, it must be like a disaster in whoever's basement has like a rig.
Some sweaty mining being done for sure.
Honestly, I saw this video about like this rig that all OG miners have, and it's like this elaborate contraption, that like goes through coolers, like goes into like this baby pool and stuff. It looked intense, to be honest. But yeah, if you don't want to start a fire, probably gotta look into some cooling units.
That is definitely true. So, shall we jump into the state of the market?
Let's get it. Let's
get it. Yeah, it's been quite volatile. A lot of
It do be
the bulls
volatile
versus the bears. But yeah, we wanted to talk about the China miners and how this migration of miners has caused a large,
right. Because I was thinking, in the beginning of the week, right, there's like this huge bump from in the market. Like it was looking pretty positive. Like it felt like the bulls were back in the driving seat, and like Elon, had tweeted that Tesla would be accepting Bitcoin again once there was like maybe 50% green Bitcoin in the space. And I feel like a lot of crypto Twitter and like influencers and crypto media put a lot of emphasis on this and its effect on the market, but I feel like so many other things happened that both led to the upward movement and then subsequent volatility afterwards. And one of those things is this like migration from Chinese miners from the north in Sichuan province down south, because they were literally ordered to pack up their bags and go down south. And this led to this led to a decrease in hash rate, so amount of miners who are mining at the moment, and that subsequently, and not only that, these miners also dumped a lot of Bitcoin, in order to pay for moving all their stuff. I think what I was telling you, Elias, before, like when I imagine like Bitcoin mining in China, it's like it must be an industrial like scale of situation, right?
Yeah,
because we know a lot of the miners around, I mean, most Bitcoin mining happens in China, like we know that. So like I think when you have a situation where a majority, well, not a majority, but a lot of miners are forced to up and move, which is not a small process at all, like that's gonna do a lot more for the price than a tweet, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's true. This is what we were saying when we were discussing Elon Musk and
Hmm.
kind of his effect on the market and how it's been decreasing over time, and how there are always many other factors that you should take into account when analyzing. Oh, this,
Hmm.
does the owner of Tesla have
Definitely.
responsibility for this dip, or is it actual like significant movements? And in this case, yeah, though it follows Bitcoin, especially, is following like it's a similar performance as like in 2017, where this is a significant crossroad, either to kind of a boring bear market for a few months,
Hmm.
or to like a major peak. I'm of course hoping for a major peak, but these kinds of events, they've happened in the past, and they have a similar, especially with the time we're in right now, they have a very similar and yeah, similar kind of movement and effect on the market. So
Yeah, it's kind
it's
of weird
definitely,
because like all this emphasis on his tweets and that, like y'all are gonna get in get him into trouble with the SEC, and it might not
yeah,
even be, that big of a deal that he is influential, but like, come on, like there are other things like this. There's the Fed announcements or
yeah.
speeches that were gonna happen about the interest rates. Like that not only affected crypto, but it affected the stock market as well. Like traders in general were really looking out to see what financial future might look like. No.
Yeah, that's true. And if you looked at the news this week, you can also notice that there was a lot of content being produced about how Bitcoin is becoming more correlated with other asset classes and
Hmm.
with like the stock market.
Yeah.
It definitely says something about the amount of effect that just an individual can have on it, but it also says something about the future of Bitcoin, I think.
Right.
Whereas the fact that it's now more closely associated and has more of parallel structure compared to like growth wise with other markets,
Hmm.
that it's becoming a more respected and used asset class.
Yep. Might signal some stabilization, or
Hmm.
that it's just as manipulated as other markets, which I'm less inclined to believe in. But it might be a thing.
Yeah,
But I definitely
I
think
agree.
like that Bitcoin and crypto in general becoming more correlated with other markets just signals you know increasing adoption in some respects.
Hmm.
Maybe not to the extent that like crypto natives or people who are very bullish on crypto want to see in the short term, but it
Yeah,
signals like a positive movement going into the long term. And what are long term, because this makes it so much easier for bigger investors or institutions to feel safer about crypto as an asset class and
yeah,
investing in it.
that's true. I think also there's a pretty interesting statement that was made by TD Ameritrade,
Mhm.
which is about Bitcoin's kind of, how it's often compared to gold.
Yep.
Um, they make a statement that it's more comparable to copper, as a,
Copper.
yeah,
Okay.
so that it's digital copper because it
Okay.
has much more of a correlation with macroeconomic events and kind of industrial, or yeah, kind of larger scale so societal events.
Okay.
So yeah, and also that it's due to its high volatility, that it's not per se a hedge, but
Mm.
it's that it's not as comparable to gold as some might uh, want it to be,
Mhm. That's
due to
interesting.
its, yeah. And I think that's pretty interesting because if you look at the fact that it's becoming more correlated, then it's becoming more correlated to gold and the stock market. So time will tell, but I do believe that there's a core of truth to that statement.
Mhm. I think that's an interesting narrative shift because the narrative around Bitcoin has dramatically, you know, gone in the direction of this is digital gold, and
Mm.
some Bitcoin maxis really see like draw the direct comparison like this is digital gold. It behaves like gold. It is literally like gold in the way it's mined. It takes energy to be mined, this, that, the other, and it's a store of value. They put a lot of emphasis on this gold narrative, and I
Yeah,
think it'll be interesting to see moving forward how do these narratives change. And I think that's also interesting because Bitcoin maxis or the Bitcoin community are not always the most open to change in regards to Bitcoin development. They're pretty
Yes.
hard in their views of what Bitcoin should be, what it should like, what it is, and how it should be moving forward. If for the most part,
Hmm.
this isn't everyone, but like I think a large majority of the community, believe that the white paper is everything, and Bitcoin should just be what is outlined in the white paper. But
Yeah.
maybe narratives will change, and people will need maybe like macroeconomic shifts, or in regards to regulation, or just how people want to use Bitcoin will actually force a change narratively.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting to take into account that when you look at an asset like gold,
Mhm.
the price of gold tends to increase whenever there's an overall depreciation in
Yeah.
other markets. Whereas Bitcoin, it tends to kind of go with the rest.
Right.
If there's a lot of FUD, if there's a, I don't know, like a big stock market crash, Bitcoin goes down with it because people are trying to leverage themselves and kind of keep up with the positions and options that they have open.
Exactly.
And often kind of Bitcoin is withdrawn to kind of cover some of these costs. So yeah, I think it's important to, it's an important development, and I think it's an important consideration to have when looking at like the current state of the market.
Hmm.
You know that
Definitely.
it's not just a hedge against other things. Bitcoin and its price movement behaves quite differently from something as like gold,
Hmm.
which is often correlated with, and so does the crypto market. If you look at it,
Yeah.
the Bitcoin and Ethereum are, I think, the only two cryptos that have become like large enough to kind of find a sort of stability to a
Yep.
certain extent, to have a certain maturity. You
Hmm.
know, whereas the rest of the crypto market, you rarely hear anyone call any other crypto a type of gold or a store of value
No,
or an actual like
not even
you know
stable coins, quite frankly.
no,
But
that's true.
contrary to what they are supposed to be. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how this develops, and especially in regards to mass adoption of crypto, because it's I've read or heard from somewhere that like a majority or a large amount of millennial millionaires are either holding crypto or have become millionaires because of crypto, and
Yeah.
they're going to be and intend to keep their wealth in crypto. But I think that says a lot about where the direction of finance or is going, and may brings up some interesting questions about a generational discrepancy in regards to adoption and understanding of these new assets.
Yeah, I agree. I think it also is crypto as a general adoptive asset uh, is best suited for kind of the younger generations. I
Definitely.
think it's an attitude and a larger amount of trust that we put into kind of you know technology,
Yeah.
and we have less of an experience with banking and traditional banking
Mhm.
than the older generations who still had to go to a physical bank to deposit cash and
Right.
cash out checks, stuff like this. Whereas we have always had online banking, so at a certain point the importance of the bank and the importance of like the services they provide is so minimal that I believe indeed that the millennial generation Z,
Mhm.
that they will definitely have more of an adoptive mindset when it comes to cryptocurrency, and especially since kind of the freedom it gives you and the fact that it's one of the few asset classes that is truly in your possession.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think it definitely has like this aspect of being a digital kind of cash equivalent as well
Mhm.
as an auction.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think there'll
I
just
d-
be a whole spectrum of, where people fall in regards to understanding of crypto and usage of crypto,
mhm.
even in the millennial or Gen Z or generations thereafter who will use crypto, because I believe crypto and blockchain are the future. So I think where it can be implemented, it probably will be implemented. It's just, I
Mhm.
feel like there'll just be, there's just be that spectrum where, some people will have a deep understanding of the principles behind cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology and be using these technologies for that. And there'll be those who will be engaging in blockchain technology and cryptos without having to, understand it, and they'll just benefit from the benefits that it brings. And I guess a, an example of that might be with NBA Top Shot and what they're doing with NBA NFTs and their moments. Like,
Mhm.
you can, there is no mention of, blockchains, crypto on their website. It's all very accessible to the non-crypto native, and that's all in the background, so. And a majority of the people who are using it probably, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, yes, NFTs, like, these are NFTs, that makes sense, but maybe,
Mhm.
younger groups of people might just know, yeah, these are NFTs, but they don't get it to the extent that they need to, and they probably don't need to. Like, this is just a thing, that they're engaging with, and they get something from it. So that's
That's
also
true.
fine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like kind of the two different type of investors there are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those classifications when it comes to crypto investors. I think there's those who are in it for the tech
Mm-hmm.
and those who are more in it for the return on investment. And I think both are fair perspectives to have, especially when you're dealing with something like, investing.
Yeah.
You want a good return on investment in general. So I do think that there's a lot to say for this. And I think on top of this, that one of the potentials of crypto um, lays in the lesser, how do you say this, lesser developed in the non-Western world.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say like like how Cardano Africa happened,
Mm-hmm.
and how this kind of it gives a lot of liberty to the people themselves over their own assets.
Yep.
Like for some, opening a bank account is much too expensive, so they have all their cash in their house.
Right.
And this kind of income inequality and security over your own
Mm-hmm.
wealth, it's massive, and this kind of solves it. And I think that the adoption and the need for an adoption in this kind of sense is much higher and
Mm-hmm.
much more urgent in these types of countries.
Yep. And on that note, on developed countries, I think always like situations where people, there are huge populations in these underdeveloped countries, and there are loads of people who are looking to come in and provide some service
Hmm.
to these populations and be a middleman and extract value, and maybe not provide the full extent of what these people could gain
Yeah.
without there being a middleman. And what cryptocurrency and blockchain technology allows is a lot of a lot of it is about removing the middleman. So,
Yeah.
these technologies definitely have a huge future in, you know everyone's future, not just in these countries. But I think it'll be amazing to see the types of developments that happen there as well.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There is absolutely, I think, something to say for the increased amount of liberty of
Mm-hmm.
the kind of the individual, especially when you're dealing with kind of let's say you're dealing with a government that is corrupt or something in this sense, and you're hypothetically a journalist. You write
Right.
something that's negative about the government.
Mm-hmm.
Government freezes your assets because they have that power and opportunity because they're centralized banking, all that blah blah. I think it puts a lot more kind of power to and freedom into the hands of those who make use of kind of the cryptocurrencies that facilitate this. So I think yeah, overall outside of crypto, even there are massive advantages and massive developments that will happen once a more mass adopted mindset comes to the market.
Most def.
But for that, we need more regulation, I think, definitely. And
Mhm.
that's something I think our buddy Mark Cuban probably agrees with.
He's been screaming at the top of his lungs for
Yeah,
regulation right
yeah.
now.
So Mark Cuban got was
Wrecked.
self-dubbed.
He got wrecked,
Yeah,
quite
he got
frankly.
self-dubbed rug pulled, I think is what he called it.
Mhm.
Mark Cuban, he invested in something called Iron Finance, and there was a bank run on Iron Finance, as sometimes happens, And I think the Iron Finance protocol was kind of a stable coin platform. And ever since the bank run happened, Mark Cuban has been calling for a stablecoin regulation. And I think that there's definitely something to say for it. His motivation is a bit clear, I think.
Oh
Just,
yeah,
he took some losses.
he had to take the L to
Yeah.
make the call that he was probably gonna make anyway. Everyone in the space should be looking, for clearer and regulation just for themselves, like to have more certainty about what's happening in the space and what they are and aren't able to do, I suppose. But also for that protection, because these kinds of things can happen, and that's kind of the risk, right? Because crypto and blockchain have been compared to like the Wild West, the frontier,
Yeah.
and that's risky. So this kind of stuff can happen. So I mean, it can happen to anyone. It happened to loads of people. I saw the chart, of the L he took, and there's a huge red candle
That's true.
down, and that
Yeah.
he is not the only one affected. Like loads of people were affected. So it's for the benefit of the space in general that there's greater protections, some more regulation, and the ability, and it'll just allow for the space to grow more if more
Yeah.
people weren't getting wrecked.
No, I completely agree. I think his argument, though, for regulation was what kind of collateralization do you need? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio, or is it are there options like like the U.S. Treasury has, where there's a certain percentage that has to be covered?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the argument he made for being fiat backed is somewhat
Mm.
yeah. I think it's a bit out of place for someone who's investing in crypto and a proponent of the space to ask for kind of fiat like backings. But
Bit ironic,
what I
but
do
yeah.
appreciate of his position is he didn't put it on the protocol. He didn't put it on the people who created the protocol. He said, "Yeah, I got rug pulled,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it's on me for being lazy in my research and not checking how many whales there were and this kind of stuff."
No, that's the risk. That's why we always, suggest that you do your own research. Like,
No,
super important.
no, yeah, and at least he didn't put it on like, "Oh, crypto is unpredictable. It's not a good asset to
I
have."
know, dude, that would have been so cringe. Like,
Yeah,
Mark, come on, man. Like
no,
that would have been so cringe. But at least I feel like Mark, at least from like the many interviews I've seen like him do on various podcasts and crypto centric media, like I
yeah,
feel like he does get it, and like he's very aggressive in trying to learn more about the space and try to understand it more. And he's like obviously incredibly smart guy to have become. He's an incredibly smart guy. So like,
mm,
and he's has the right to say what he wants and like give out his opinions and throw out some ideas. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, definitely, I think everyone should have their say on what they think regulations should look like in the future, and not and definitely, at least Mark's opinion shouldn't have more weight than anyone else's because it's a decentralized world. You know,
yeah,
everyone
definitely,
should have a
and it's
say.
becoming more and more real. Uh,
Exactly.
so yeah, and if you look at recent developments now, since we were talking about cash a while back,
Hmm.
and about more like need for regulation and governmental kind of outlining.
Mm-hmm.
On a positive note, and I think this is positive. If you look at the biggest economy, or one of the biggest economies, China,
Mm-hmm.
they recently, even though it's not the most decentralized currency, the digital yuan,
Yeah.
they created the system through which it can be exchanged for cash,
Yep.
which I don't know. I would say that that's a very good
I definitely see
precedent.
good sides and sort of negative sides to
Yeah.
what China is doing with the digital yuan. Like,
Hmm.
I definitely think it's positive in the way that it's, an interesting adoption of cryptocurrencies, and I don't think China will be the last to attempt such a thing, to have a nationalized currency
Hmm.
that's a crypto token. But I guess I'm a bit wary of how it's being implemented, in that it almost feels as if that it's like uber centralized, in that
Yes.
it's uber centralized in that China might do something like, yeah, all cryptocurrencies are banned. China,
Hmm.
we're just gonna have the digital yuan, or if other cryptocurrencies are allowed, we're gonna regulate it in such a way that it's not feasible,
Yeah.
or not like an attractive thing to hold or deal with, because they want, as a state who has this crypto token, they're in, almost incentivized to do whatever they can to make it what is used.
Yeah. And if you look at kind of governmental publications on
Hmm.
their digital yuan, their first and primary goal that is outlined is this keeping track of the flow of currency through the country,
Hmm.
and figuring out, well, in their words, better ways to optimally monitor kind of the currency movement, and adapt based on that.
Hmm.
And then their second kind of reasoning behind it is to kind of I think they called it liberating the unbanked.
Right.
So those who do not have a bank account, who indeed, like I mentioned before, store their cash just like in their fridge or something. I don't
Yeah.
know, that they have access. So that,
In the
I think that's
fridge.
a positive. But
Yeah.
I think that the amount of control, like this is what I was saying, right?
Hmm.
The amount of control that the government then has over the flow of currency,
Hmm.
and let's say you do something that the government does not like,
Yeah.
uh, that there's this much of a control over the currency, and it's worrisome, I think.
Hmm. Most
So
definitely. But I definitely think it's an interesting development to keep watching. And I think their implementation of this into society will be like quite easy and seamless.
yeah.
Because I think Western societies are still very cash based, quite
Yeah.
frankly. And like, yeah, you got your online banking, you got your contactless cards, but like money, like paperless money society, that's
Hmm.
like been happening in Asia, like for ages. Like, they've, I feel like, recognized that people have, everyone has, like, a lot of people have a smartphone these days, and even if they don't have a computer, for example, they'll probably have like a phone of some type,
Yeah.
and they've just created systems and services